Welcome to this explainer. Let's jump right in. Today, we're exploring an absolutely brilliant framework, essentially a hiking guide for security. It takes something notoriously complex, like managing corporate cybersecurity risk, and translates it into a scenario where the stakes are intensely physical. We're going to look at cyber risk exactly like planning a dangerous, multi-day mountain expedition. Why? Because out on the trail, just like on a corporate network, the environment is completely, utterly indifferent to your preparation. The mountain doesn't negotiate. That idea perfectly captures the uncomfortable truth that every single cybersecurity framework eventually arrives at. Risk is inevitable. You literally cannot eliminate every danger on the mountain, and there's no way to eliminate every threat on the internet. Our goal in this explainer is simple. We want to show you how to make enough good decisions so you can reach the summit, protect what actually matters, and get home safely. Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our expedition itinerary. First, planning the expedition, then the anatomy of risk, the 4 doors, surviving the trail, and finally reaching the summit. Phase 1, planning the expedition, day 0. To really wrap our heads around this phase, imagine a hiker. We'll call her Nadia. Nadia has a bad knee, exactly 11 days of leave, and she's sitting on her kitchen floor at 11 p.m., surrounded by all her gear. She's asking herself one vital question. What could go wrong, and what am I going to do about it? If we map her hiking gear directly to a corporate cyber program, it clicks perfectly. The destination she's trying to reach? Well, those are your business objectives. Her backpack represents your assets. The trail itself? That's your business processes. And the weather forecast is your threat intelligence. Before you ever go out and buy a shiny new piece of technology, you absolutely must understand what you're trying to protect and where you're actually going. Now check out Nadia's ranked list of what she's protecting, her crown jewels. Notice how her life is at the very top, and the summit, which is the whole reason for the trip in the first place, is actually at the bottom. The big takeaway here is that you cannot protect everything equally. If you try, you just end up protecting everything badly. Because her life outranks the summit, any decision she makes on the trail that trades her life for the summit view is automatically a terrible trade. You've got to ask yourself, in your own organization, are you confusing the summit with your actual lifeblood? Section 2, the anatomy of risk. This is where we break down disaster. Now, what's really interesting about this concept is how we have to separate the things we can't control from the things we can. A threat is something out there capable of causing harm. Think a heavy rainstorm or a hacker. It doesn't care about you at all. A vulnerability, on the other hand, is a crack in your armor. It's wearing a cotton shirt in the freezing cold or having weak passwords. You can't do a single thing to stop the rain, but you have total 100% control over whether you wear that cotton shirt. So let's see how this builds into the actual math of a disaster. Rain by itself isn't a risk, right? It's just weather. But when an afternoon storm, the threat, meets a cotton base layer, the vulnerability, the consequence is hypothermia. Threat times vulnerability times consequence equals risk. Remember, you never patch the threat. You only ever patch yourself. When we map out likelihood versus impact, something fascinating happens. Beginners almost always obsess over Hollywood-style fears. You know, a statistically rare leopard attack on the trail or some mysterious hacker dropping through the ceiling panels. But the veterans, the experienced security leaders, they worry about the highly likely, boring operational realities. They worry about bald boots on wet rock, or in cyber terms, missing backups and human error. Fear is honestly a terrible risk analyst because it optimizes for what's vivid rather than what is actually frequent. Section 3, the 4 doors, how we actually manage the risk. Whenever you face a danger on the map, whether you're a hiker or a cybersecurity professional, you have to make a choice. You can avoid, mitigate, transfer, or accept. Every single risk decision you will ever make walks through one of these 4 doors. Door 1 is avoidance. This is literally deleting the risk entirely. If a mountain ridge is too dangerous, Nadia just doesn't walk on it. In cyber, it's flat out refusing to install unsupported software. Avoidance is incredibly powerful, but it costs you the upside. You don't get that amazing summit view. Now door 2 is mitigation. This is all about stacking the deck in your favor. It's carrying an ice axe or turning on multi-factor authentication. It doesn't magically eliminate the threat, but it introduces controls to reduce the chance of disaster. Like, say, setting a strict 1 p.m. turnaround time on the mountain. Door 3 is transfer, and we really need to clear up a massive misconception here. Yes, you can buy helicopter rescue insurance for a hike, just like you can buy cyber insurance for a company. but you have to understand what you're actually buying. You are only transferring the financial cost. Insurance does not prevent gravity. Nobody has ever bought an insurance policy that unbreaks a femur, and no cyber insurance policy unbreaches a network. You transfer the cost, for sure, but you can never transfer the physical consequence. So the crucial point here is understanding the fourth door, acceptance. Listen, there is a huge difference between ignorant acceptance, which is really just ignoring a risk and calling it peace, and informed acceptance. To legitimately accept a risk, it has to meet some really strict criteria. It must have an owner, it's got to be written down, signed by the person actually bearing the consequence, and it absolutely needs a review date. Accepting that you'll get blisters because preventing them would ruin the pace of the hike, that is informed acceptance. Section 4, Surviving the Trail. What happens when the mountain moves? So what happens when a storm rolls in early or someone in your group twists an ankle? A risk register isn't some static spreadsheet you print out and stick on the fridge. It's a daily hiking journal. The true safety system isn't the plan you made at home. It's the 10 minutes at camp every single night where you sit down and ask, okay, what changed today? And what exactly is the plan for tomorrow? Let's compare weather updates to threat intelligence. If a mountain ranger suddenly announces a heavy snow warning, good hikers adapt. They delay the trip or they pack up and leave early. Ignoring the weather? Yeah, that rarely ends well. In cybersecurity, this is exactly how you should treat threat intelligence. If a brand new ransomware campaign is announced, a good security team immediately ramps up their monitoring and reviews their exposure. A control you have never tested is not a control. It's a wish with a receipt. This is such a stark reminder about incident response. An unopened first aid kit, an untested water filter, or a satellite messenger that you've literally never turned on, that doesn't provide safety. It only provides the feeling of safety. If you haven't tested your backups or your response plans before the disaster actually hits, they aren't controls, they are just wishes with receipts. So ask yourself, how many wishes is your security team currently relying on? Section 5, Reaching the Summit. And as brilliantly illustrates the concept of residual risk. You can have the absolute best boots, the most experienced guide, perfect weather reports, and the tightest cyber controls in the world, but the mountain can still surprise you. Residual risk is simply the uncertainty that remains after you've done everything right. No board of directors expects zero cyber risk, just like no experienced hiker expects zero danger. They just expect conscious, informed decisions about the uncertainty that is left over. Which brings us to our final thought. The mountain was never your enemy. It simply doesn't care if you prepared. And guess what? Neither does the internet. If you refuse to do the hard work on the kitchen floor, if you don't name your risks, rank your crown jewels, and patch your vulnerabilities, you're actually still making a choice. Because every risk you haven't named, you have already accepted. You just don't know the price yet. So as you look at your own corporate landscape today, which unnamed risks are you unknowingly paying the price for? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and we'll see you next time.